and welcome to the Future of Gaming. You're listening to our weekly FOGcast, but we do have a very special episode for you today. The plan for today is to talk about community-first game development or community-led game development. I have two amazing guests today. We have Kathleen Osgood, who is the Director of Business Development at Sky Mavis, and we also have Glenn McGuire, who is the founder and CEO at Tribesters Studio. You'll see why specifically these two people are two of the probably best people to join me in this conversation. First, so lots has been happening over the past couple of weeks, and Kathleen, you seem to have become the new face of Ronin. How is that doing?
It's been incredible. I'm so happy now to be out there and have announced these game studios. We've been working extremely hard over the past year to set up the vision and the future of Sky Mavis and becoming a publisher, and then also bringing on additional games into Ronin. And we're a little bit different than some of the other chains. We're permission-based. So we've evaluated over 250 teams. We have found great partners to work with. And yeah, it's so great to finally be like, all right, guys, this is it. They're here, because the folks on Twitter have been like, Kathleen, where are all the new games? And I just wanted to tell them, like, hey, we're being so strategic about this, and we're setting up internally so we can handle the capacity and really get them out there and help build them in a meaningful way. And yeah, it feels great.
Amazing. So Sky Mavis is out of the closet, finally.
We are out of the closet.
It must be feeling good to be able to tell all these haters that were, pointing at you and like, look at Axie Infinity. They haven't been doing anything, for years. And to just now have something to show for and just point at amazing builders like Glenn and say, this is coming.
Well, we've silently been shipping this entire time. So even if you look at some of the pieces of infrastructure we have, the Mavis Hub, which we hope to become the Steam Plus App Store of Web3, that's been being built. And that's where all of these games are going to live, both on desktop. And we have the really amazing plans for what's happening within the wallet. And we also launched things like social login, where we're extremely focused on like what that user onboarding looks like, because we have this amazing community of Web3 gamers, but we're very focused on generating more users into the Ronin ecosystem for these games and having it be this really clean experience. So we've been silently shipping. We've also been building out the Axie empire. So one of the games that we brought on, they are building an Axie game. The group comes out of South Korea. They left a studio called Sunday Toes, which was bought by WeMade, and they made the smash hit Annie Pong series, which did like 2.2 billion in revenue, 140 million downloads. They created this IP and expanded it throughout South Korea, which is a market we want to tap into. And now this core team is building an Axie narrative match 3 game. And by doing this, we've internally had to really get strict on what our lore guidelines look like. So we have the Builders program, which is more amateur developers. Granted, they're creating these amazing Axie experiences where they're now following lore guidelines. And now we have all of these extremely studios that have done a lot of like numbers in the past and have all of this experience building out these Axie related games. And so, yeah, we're working on our lore guidelines, our art guidelines. I want it to be like this is Mario, but now you have all of these different interoperable experiences for Axie. And you do that by having a strict world that is built that other builders can build within. Because if it's just no rules, willy-nilly, it gets a little bit disorganized. So, yeah. We've been shipping and building, and super excited to talk about some of the studios that we have partnered with.
Great. Just before we do that, one of the big narrative points around what Web3 means for games is this sense of interoperability or this concept of interoperability. When you mentioned building out the Axie IP, what does that mean for the Axies itself? Is that where these experiences are centered around?
Yes. So we have this idea that we've been building out called Axie Core. And it's not Axie Origins. It's not our Homeland game. It's not this Narrative Match 3, our Builders Program games. It's this idea of these assets that belong to Axie itself that then can be leveraged throughout all of our other games. And we have some announcements later in the future as to like what that means from interoperability perspective.
So many
I can't dive into now. I know, but we want to give as much utility to Axie as possible. So these developers are able to leverage the Axies themselves, our land, our tokens, SLP, AXS, Ronin, our lore guidelines, our art guidelines, and some of these other big teams building Axie. We then will be able to take some of what they build and put it back into Axie Core for then all of the other developers around there to utilize as well.
Very exciting. But now let's talk about non-Axie IPN games.
Okay.
Maybe, Kathleen, I think, so a bit of context. I spoke with Kathleen and I spoke with Glenn, and Kathleen does a way better job at pitching what Glenn's doing than he does himself. And so why don't you, Kathleen, talk us through, maybe with a focus on Tribes, the other gaming experiences that you're looking at and building up?
Okay, I'll get to Tribes last, so I'll run through the first initial ones. And every single game we have onboarded has been highly strategic. It has a different approach. We have to place our bets in many different areas, and we have to deliver experiences that cater to everybody, right? Because we want the Mavis Hub in our wallet to be this trusted place where users can go and play Web3 games that they trust. You know, that doesn't exist right now, and there's many reasons why you can trust us and trust that the games that are coming out of the Mavis Hub are good. And it's because we're deeply partnering with these teams. We have an entire operating team dedicated. We've almost set it up as if we were like a Web2 publisher, but now we have this cool community element. And we have a games integration manager, a product team, a go-to-market team, where we're really leveraging all of our infrastructure and assets to help build amazing products. And of course, the advisory side of things as to how these teams will bring on Web3. But then also our gold is our community and our creators. And I think that a really great example of how this worked is our first relationship, one of our first partnerships is called Directive Games. It's a studio founded by one of the creative directors of CCP for 8 years, who worked on EVE Online for 8 years, which is one of the biggest gaming economies in the world. They're launching a game called The Machines Arena. It's a 4v4 top-down shooter. There's amazing technology involved in it, and it's actually launched on the Epic Store even prior to being launched in the Mavis Hub. And we like this approach because we know this team can generate users and generate excitement. And a lot of the barriers into Web3, it comes from people like doubting, hey, maybe some of these Web3 games aren't as fun. And so what we did for Machines Arena is we gave the beta launched on the day that we made this big announcement that we were opening up Ronin, we're announcing DPOS, we have 5 game studios, and Twitter was taken over by the Machines Arena. We gave 2,500 creators access to play the game a week before we launched it. They created all of this content. There's folks dressing up in cosplay already. We're really focused on bringing these teams their 1,000 first true fans. And that's what we can provide through our enormous community, enormous ecosystem. These creators, by giving them experiences to play before it gets out there, and by giving them codes to give away, they themselves get more clout, right? Because then people go to them as, hey, like these folks know what's coming out beforehand. So if you look at what happened with Machines Arena, we had massive engagement. They definitely got their first 1,000 true fans. Esports tournaments all over the place, and we're continuing to create content in collaboration with them. So very excited about Machines Arena. One I talked about earlier called Team Bali. They're the folks out of Korea that's building the narrative Axie Match 3. The other one we have is called Battle Bears. So Battle Bears is it's an IP, it's a MOBA type game that was developed out of Vietnam by a studio called Skyview. And Battle Bears has been like a game for the past 9 years, basically. And it is this like OG IP, and Trung, our founder, went over to the office, played the game for 12 hours straight. And he's like, we can put NFT elements into this. They care deeply about their IP. We care deeply about our IP. And we think it's a great introduction to see like, hey, can we get some of their 40 million people that have downloaded this game? Could we get them then reinterested and possibly like owning their assets and getting into this new world through Web3, and also leverage what we're building as a new mechanism of user acquisition for this team. The last game before I'll get to Tribes is called Bold. And some people may think this is an odd move for us, but the team they're building a series of cricket games. Cricket is the second most popular sport in the entire world. India, we identified through a lot of data, is an emerging market we want to tap into. We did really well in the Southeast Asia emerging market. That's why Axie took off. But we want that to happen in a new emerging market. And India has 600 million Indians that are under the age of 25, which is prepped and primed for not only blockchain technology, which they are very friendly for, but also gaming. And they're a mobile-first country. These games are pretty low fidelity. The founder is absolutely incredible, has boots on the ground, all these cricket players associated with him, was on Shark Tank, sold previous gaming companies before, and we really believe that he could be the one to take this to the masses. And then we have Tribes, which I am so excited to talk about. Glenn and I were introduced through a mutual friend, shout out Henry, and the second
He's
I
been
met
on,
Glenn,
by the way.
Henry's been on, yeah. Henry's
yeah,
advisor of mine. I respect him deeply. He's been so instrumental in my growth in terms of the gaming ecosystem, and I'm forever grateful that he made this introduction to Glenn. Second I met Glenn, I'm like, this guy needs to be within the Sky Mavis family because he gets it. He gets community so deeply. And I want him to touch on his background and how it relates to what he's building himself. He's also the most humble person you'll ever talk to. So it takes like a couple conversations to understand that he helped build he built some of the biggest communities in all of gaming at both Scopely and King. And he is the type of person that has the same ethos as Sky Mavis does in terms of reciprocity. The more you enable your community, which is what we did through Axie, right? It was the first time that users sensed this deep ownership and sense of belonging because they could own their gaming assets in a unique way. And then they could be invested in the open market through AXS. And what did they do? Because they felt this sense of ownership. They gave back. They created guilds and DAOs and podcasts and music videos and content. And it had this mass network effect. And I'm very drawn to this industry because of that. I originally, I got my DGen rocks off in meme coins. And I saw these community members come together and contribute in this meaningful way towards something that was made of a meme. It meant nothing. So I kept thinking, what if we can actually structure what happened with Axie Infinity, and we can structure and get people behind helping like create something and contribute and then structure that contribution. And that's exactly what Glenn is doing. So he is building a social MMO called Tribesters Island of the Solas. He is building out this incredible world, being extremely thoughtful about all of the IP. I don't know how much I can say, so I'm going to let him get into it himself. But prior to launching this MMO, which is going to take a minute, he's launching a community engagement platform that does just what I was talking about. It enables individuals to contribute to the game as it's being built and after it's being built. A game is technically always being built, but also receive rewards for contributing. So they're still talking about what those types of rewards look from, but it's a very structured way of creating with your community. He calls it community-led gaming. You're going to be able to help contribute to lore, character development, art style, and then be rewarded for it. I mean, what if it kind of, Glenn gives this example, so I'll repeat it, but if like J.R.R. Tolkien allowed little bits of Lord of the Rings to be developed by the fans and the people that were in the community, like these people would feel such a mass sense of belonging. And that's what we really believe that Glenn is building with this community engagement platform and structuring what people can bring to the table. And so they're just feeling this overwhelming sense of belonging. And we think that's an amazing way of fostering community as opposed to only launching NFTs 2 years before your game is being built and not having a method of delivering content and utility for those NFTs. So we are so excited about Glenn. We believe this could be an absolute game changer in terms of Web3 in general, and then also how communities are made and being built, because now you can have this mass sense of ownership through NFTs and tokens. And yeah, I'm going to stop talking, but we're so excited to now have Glenn kind of give an overview and dive into his beautiful, magical mind. So yeah.
I want to meet this guy. He sounds great. I don't see the reflection in the mirror in comparison to that. But look, a little background. I spent some years at King. I spent some years at Scopely, primarily always on the customer side, on the player experience side, and really delved into greater understanding behavioral elements of why people play games, what they love, what they're frustrated about. So it gives you a really good bedrock, gives you a really good understanding of really what people want out of games as we go forward. And the Tolkien example's really, really great. I also played World of Warcraft when I was a much younger person, and the probability of me being a fan for life, if I had any influence over the world of Azeroth, whether or not it was designed a little character, wrote a part in a quest, I would still wear that t-shirt today. So I think when people fall in love with brands and they have the opportunity to be a part of it, what if that came first instead of it becoming last, where we kind of consume it and then we fall in love with it? What if we created enough space to develop that IP together? So that's the very, very high level premise of it. And then in truth, Web3 communities are so passionate, and it's just probabilistically certain that there's incredible talent in it. So what if we get to leverage off that talent base too? So in a fun way, we think we're bringing structure to a conversation. We're incredibly humbled and happy to be a part of the Sky Mavis ecosystem and community. We've already had some very early engagements with incredibly intelligent people that want to be a part of that early journey. So we think we can build an incredible gaming world together with a fantastic community, and that does require time. It requires technology. We're building a platform to help us manage all of those things. But we think if we pull it off, we've got this incredible IP that was built and influenced by a community that will want to stay with it forever. And it's maybe it's a super corny thing, but we're in a space that we now have 100-year franchises. Mickey Mouse is coming up to the point in a fun way that the IP is no longer protected by trademarks, because it's 100 years old. It's insane. So the probability again of the next generation, the next IP being created by Web3 communities is super, super high. And then we have a base, we call it Tribesters. They are these cutesy little characters that live on a magical island. So, we have a structure, but then everything is influenceable. What they do next, what their background is, who they are, what they stand for, can all be community influenced. And then as we go forward, we build out a world, a social MMO, that this comes to life, and then you get to play the little character that you helped design.
Are there examples of this early player/community involvement in games done before? And if not, why? Because it makes a ton of sense.
It makes a ton of sense. It's hard. That's probably the obvious reason. And if you think about how games are built and how people consume games, you really want it to be as polished as possible. So there's maybe a little bit of an industry bias towards super smart people in a room. We build games together. We think we have most of the right answers. We do use things like player research. We take qualitative and quantitative viewpoints, and the hope is that you make the product as best as possible. And then you loop in customers kind of almost after the fact, after it's launched, because it is super, super hard to do that as you're building the product. But we just think about it in a different way, because if you offer choices to your community, what's is there really a wrong choice in it? So let's say, for instance, launching a character inside a game. If I have a character-driven game, there's probably a lot of work goes in behind the scenes to choosing a character, how it's balanced, when it's launched. I make those decisions, I launch it, and then I find out the community thinks it sucks, that was a shitty character, and we shouldn't have launched it. So there's then a feedback loop on how you change it and if the meta was right. But what if the kind of more community focused way is to present two options and say, here's character one, and character one is this thing, and here's character two, and character two is this thing, and it has this kind of power structure and blah blah blah. So then the community gets to vote on which character was in. There's kind of no wrong decision in it, because again, if the community has voted for it, and it doesn't preclude the other character going in the game at another point, of course, but it means that the majority of the decision making was done with your audience. So like the shock factor goes down, the interest goes up. Would I buy that character? Would I play that character? Would I want to collect for that character if I was a part of choosing for that character? I probably would. So again, it's like we have a fun thing. We call it the broccoli and carrots. It's like you provide two sound options and you're happy with both. So then there kind of is no wrong decision for us putting content inside the world, because it's what the community really wanted. So like it is just hard. It's the reason why we're investing so much in an engagement platform. We're building proprietary technology to manage hundreds of thousands of voices to make sure that they have a home and they have a safe place to engage, and that that they can engage in a way in which they want to. So that technology doesn't exist. I can't go out, I can't buy it, I can't install it, because again, we have to be able to effectively manage hundreds of thousands of voices at one time.
And is that then that Discord doesn't do, where it just doesn't work once you pass a certain number of people?
Yeah, Discord for me, like Discord's a great product that has its place, but the way in which it's built with chronology and threads, it's hard to find information in. It's hard to kind of meaningfully engage with large scale audiences in it. So we almost have to design from zero, from a completely different problem solved perspective. So like we have residency programs. So that's a structural point inside the engagement platform that allows us to handle how people will engage with certain aspects of the game. So we have a residency program for art, for lore, and for game assets. We then create effectively like a campaign or think of it as almost like a contest where somebody can engage with that. So that's highly structural. It's easy for us to create. It's easy for users to find. It's easy for users to engage with and submit. So trying to do that in Discord where things are timeline and chronology based would just be almost impossible.
Got it. It seems to me, looking back at the history of games and specifically game design, that at a certain point you would base the decisions on talent or on people that had already built games, and that would be like the way you would move forward and the way you would make decisions. In the mobile era, it seems like it shifted more towards like a rapid iteration and testing. Is this involving the community early the new way to reduce uncertainty and to give yourself a higher chance at success, which in games is probably one of the hardest things to get?
Yeah, no, it totally is. but look, I'd even stretch it out one further, because games are not only expensive to make, they're expensive to market. It's hard to find customers. We live in a world that attention is hard to find and obtain, and as a result expensive. So like I think gaming will change. How games are made will change forever with the engagement of Web3 communities. We see it with absolute clarity. We're building our whole studio ecosystem and structure around that notion. And it's a really, really simple thesis with complex behavioral elements to it. But if I'm engaged with let's say, the building of Tribesters, and I have a win. I'm in there, I'm engaging with it. I feel like I have influence. I feel like my voice matters. I'm probably going to tell 3 of my friends. They're probably going to come in. They're probably going to share my wins. They're probably going to play the game. Even maybe if it's not a genre that they super like, they're going to give it a chance because they were involved and feel emotionally connected to it. So we think of it, the difference between mining and magnetism. Like Web 2 mobile games have to mine. You have to buy lots of customers and then filter through to find the 2% that actually spend in your game, and filter through to find the 10% that become VIPs. So that's an analogy is that's a mining process, where Web3 gaming, community like gaming, is a magnet opportunity. It's one person comes in and they amplify their excitement and engagement, and they bring in 3 people, and they bring in 3 people, and everybody stays because it's a really safe, open environment that everybody, again, has a common purpose, has an excitement around what it is that you're building. And look, there's a fun side of it too, that what constitutes the game will change. We think of the game in an experiential way. I'll try not to get too metaphorical with it, but like, back in the day, I'm old enough to buy a game, blow out the dust, and put it in a cartridge. That's not the world that we live in today. People want greater experience. They want greater influence over the game. So we think building the game together is a part of the gaming experience. Live operating the game with your audience will be the new norm. So, if you have the opportunity like we did to start again and build everything from day zero, in Tribe Studio, this is how you would design it, with your customer in mind, to get those early feedback loops in and your highly engaged audience in. And, we're, again, super lucky to be a part of the Sky Mavis network in this instance, where we've got 2,700 content creators to engage with and listen to as we build it out. So, if we think of, like, mobile games as a very hit-driven industry, it's hard to break the top 10 now. It's becoming super expensive to launch games. You can be in a $10-20 million mode and getting a game to market these days quite easily. So how do you take a different approach to it? Find your audience that has the same core values as you, treat them respectfully, reward and recognize the benefit of having that audience, and then build incredible products with them. So I think it's a game changer.
Kathleen, is the platform you see being used across the Sky Mavis ecosystem? Maybe even all of the games building there?
Yeah, so that's why we were really interested not only in what Glenn was building from a MMO perspective, like the idea of a social MMO and how he's developing his IP and lore, but being able to leverage this technology across all games being built on Ronin as a method of fostering community was really important to us as well. So this tech is available currently to all games building on Ronin when it does launch and become available to the public. Probably a couple months after, we'll have to figure out what that looks like. But yeah, it definitely is a perk of the Ronin ecosystem for quite some time.
Really exciting. Are there, you guys think, and I think Glenn, you might have, I'm sure you have thought about this. Are there types of games that naturally fit better for this type of approach? I think it feels to me you describe tribes as, different groups that each have their own quirks and natures. And, I heard you say that these are well thought out. And by that, I'm assuming that they fit with, general, like, human groups and types of people. And so, it sounds to me like what you're building initially is a perfect fit. How much does that extend to other genres?
So I guess I'd answer it in 2 ways, because 2 parts to what is the perfect fit for a Web3 game. I think story has more to do with it than genre does. So that's the kind of first thing that we double down on. So as we're thinking about the world and I'll try my best not to have any leaks and spoilers in the middle of it, but like we think about it in a highly structured way. We think about the island, where it's placed, why nobody has found it, what power structures there are there political structures, how does the chronology of events in their world versus the wider world in which it lives in impact the storyline. So I think creating a depth inside your lore or inside your IP is incredibly important, because it just makes it way more interesting. There's more opportunity for people to engage in it. So if you build that structure right, and like, you know, full disclosure, we have an award-winning writer helping us build our lore out at the minute. You know, a BAFTA award-winning writer. So we're not cutting any corners with launching anything here. You know, so number one, I think get that job right. Number two, then it allows you to have different, let's call it game product experiences as a result of that. So we think a social MMO really fits with it, because you've got the breadth of the world, you've got the ability for identity, you've got the ability for like choose your own tribe, choose your own choices are things that we talk a lot about internally. But that's not to say that there aren't an opportunity for, like, it's not the right phrase, like micro games make them sound small, but like offshoot games that make sense to the storyline. So, you know, is there an opportunity that we could build a game around an event in this world? I think that's absolutely certain. Is there an opportunity for us to, you know, again, take an event that's inside the lore of the game that's so compelling and make that a different genre-based game? Yes, but again, it comes back to doing a great job with your lore, with your story, with the world that you're building. Make it feel compelling. You know, potentially have that sense of impending doom. You know, that sometimes great stories have, in order for you to be able to again leverage that across as many genres as possible.
You mentioned having a BAFTA winning writer on the team right now who's helping you write out the lore. How much of a change in work structure does it become, you know, from a practical but also from a, you know, theoretical point of view, when you suddenly are not fully 100% in charge of the decisions anymore, and you have to take into account at every step, you know, what the community wants and feels?
Yeah, well, it's fun. We were talking about the roles, and this morning I was talking to somebody about a role that may appear in the short to mid term, which is a lore historian. So that's how serious we take it. That in the future we may have to have somebody as a part of our team. And by the way, that could be a community-driven role. It doesn't necessarily have to be, you know, an employee-driven role, but a role that takes into account when we make a change, when the community designs something, when they add something to it, how do we factor it into the history of Tribesters? You know, so like we literally have a historian role to kind of factor in there. You know, so and again, I think there's some things that we think are structural. You know, like the Tribesters live on an island. They live in a tribe structure. They live in a magical world. It probably doesn't have steampunk elements. It probably doesn't have technology elements. It probably doesn't have lightsabers. You know, so if the community all of a sudden tell me that they want lightsabers in the Tribesters game, like, it's going to be a topic of conversation. That's how open we are to the whole thing. Now, does that fit in the world that I designed in my brain? You know, that we've got amazing, incredibly talented people helping us create structure around it? Like, no, but that's not the point. The point is, if the community feel that that's a direction that the story and the world should go in, then it becomes a topic of conversation. You know, so that's how serious we treat the community's influence.
Would it be fair if I made, or, you know, put this as a sort of trade-off between optimal storytelling? You started, you know, this with giving the example about Tolkien and the Lord of the Rings universe, and, you know, I would dare to call, I'm a big Lord of the Rings fan, as the Lord of the Rings universe as almost perfect, right? Is it fair to put this as a sort of trade-off? Like, the more you involve the community, the potentially less of a optimal story you get, but the more community buy-in you get and involvement and like a strong attraction. Is that fair? Or am I completely wrong?
I think it's possible, but here's a different way to look at it. If we look at Lord of the Rings, what if somebody in your community is about to write The Hobbit? So The Hobbit is effectively an offshoot of the Lord of the Rings. So what if that wasn't in Tolkien's original design? He created this incredibly world in the struggle and the darkness that is not only in the races in that story, in the world in that story, and it's the fight for good. But what if he didn't have the Hobbit in him, and that was something that the community did? So, or what if there was, I don't know, a sub character inside the Hobbit that all of a sudden gets its own identity and its own origin story? I think what I would maybe politely point to is the Star Wars world has been very good at telling offshoot stories, and I think that they could easily be community driven. So, like, if we look at Rogue One's origin story is incredibly interesting. It was a person that was in and around the Star Wars movies. It was one line in the movie which was something like, I think it's something like, many boffins died to get us this information type thing. And it's like that created a whole movie and a series of characters, and another world underneath it that fit it. So I think it's about fit more than it is quality. And I think, I just think that when you get community at scale, when you're talking about 2, 3, 4 million people, it's probabilistic that there's incredible talent in there. So I don't think that the breadth of the voice means that it reduces the potency of the voice. I think it's the opposite. I think we're about to find some really incredibly talented people in there.
I can see that. Yeah. Fascinating. When can we expect something to play from you, Glenn?
You're the worst.
I know.
So it's a very valid question. So look, absolutely, first of all, the way in which we build games are different. We think that's the exciting things about us. So we build the lore, and then we launch the engagement platform so we can engage with the audience, our customers, our players, our community, so that they can build the game together. Now, we still believe in keeping people excited along the journey. So we'll have something very compelling every 30 to 90 days. So that's something that we haven't announced to the market yet.
There you go.
So you could have that, so we think of it in cycles. We think of it 30, 60, 90 is our cycles that we develop, a series of experiences internally. But like also, when you get the product and what the product is going to change too, and we should talk a little bit about that. So maybe back in the day, like 1,000, 10,000 customers got a beta product access, and that was considered really good engagement. What was that product? That product was probably nearly fit for market, and it was really, it was polished, and your customers got to play it early, and those customers felt really special. But our view is like, we're probably going to redefine what an alpha is. Customers, your community members will be involved in genuine testing. Guilds and DAOs will be involved in genuine testing. So your gaming experience as to when you get to, let's say, consume content is going to change with us too. And that could be in a 68-month window that we've got people in servers. And this is fun for me. The first time I seen a game tester, I got that excited, and I talked to them about how incredible their role was playing games all day. And they're like, no, I run into walls, and then I move over 2 spaces, and then I run into another wall, and I move, so there's a lot of wall running that, in the industry we might think is dead boring, but from a community perspective or a guild or a DAO, they could be incredibly interested in that experience and that opportunity too. So yes, we'll have experiences every 30 to 90 days. Some of those will be experiences that just don't exist today for gamers and gaming communities. And again, we think that that's what the excitement is for community-led gaming.
Mm-hmm. By the way, the reason I ask annoying questions is specifically so I get answers that you shouldn't be giving me and get words first.
It's true. It's a good tactic.
Glenn's such a people pleaser too that he definitely, like, you push him a little bit and he'll be like,
no.
I'll give you a little bit.
That guy.
My first ever meeting with Glenn, he brought cookies. That tells you a lot about a person.
He brought me a scarf from Ireland when I met him at NFT NYC.
Was it green?
Yeah. It was green.
Oh, of course. Yeah.
Obviously. Yeah, it's very quality as well. I'm a big gift if you give me a gift, like, you know.
That's how you get it. That's how you get a partnership and an investment.
No, but
it probably says a lot about both of us, Nico, that our first meeting, it was in a park in New York. It was nice and open. I brought cookies and you were going to do some incredibly exciting, never done before. What was it? It was.
I got my ass kicked in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu.
Yes,
right after
Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. So it's like my idea of healthiness was walk to a park and eat a cookie. His was just cram a business meeting in before hitting the mats. So it was a very different outlook that day. It was a great. It was a great conversation.
It was a good day. It was a good day indeed. Good. Where can people find more information and follow you? Maybe Glenn, you can go first.
I will at Tribesters World, which is our Twitter handle, seems to be the best place at the minute. We're launching a pretty big campaign around how we introduce the Tribesters World, and we'll launch a lot of that through Twitter. So Twitter is the best place. At Tribesters World is the handle.
Fantastic. Kathleen,
what's your
announced...
handle, Glenn, as well?
Yeah.
My handle is at Glenn McGuire.
That's Irish humbleness, Christian
Irish
guilt.
Humbleness.
Yeah. my Irish guilt kicks in, and again, that was my deflection tactic to push you over to the corporate one. No, look, I do post that I have been writing Substacks on some things that are kind of personally interesting in what it is that we're trying to build. So, absolutely, hit me up on Twitter at Glenn McGuire.
So, Kathleen, if people want to send you a virtual scarf, where can they find you?
I am Osgood on Twitter with 3 O's, so KOSGOOOD. And then you can follow Sky Mavis, Ronin, Axie. They're all in my bio, so give them all a follow. Join our community. You can get a starter Axie for free if you want to start engaging with us. But what I have to say to folks that aren't in our community yet, like, we're at the genesis of all of this. We're giving games like Tribesters where you can be a part of something from the ground up. You know, you don't have to be in love with Axie, but now we have an opportunity for you to, fall in love and be part of one of these new first games on Ronin. And they will most likely be the first major NFT drop on Ronin aside from Axie itself. Still, we're still discussing what that looks like, but, there's a lot of opportunity here for developers. I'm also looking for additional studios. We'll probably onboard 5 additional partners this year. We're being really strategic about this next batch and making sure we have the operational capacity to handle it internally, but I'm still searching. So if you're a developer, partnerships at skymavis.com, you can email me. And I think that's all the places.
The partnerships you're looking for, is that more on a like a genre spectrum, or is it more on a team spectrum? What are you looking for more specifically, if you can share?
Yeah, it is team based. I'm really looking for what Glenn, which is probably a topic we should have discussed here, like what does UGC versus community influenced mean in what he's building? But I'm looking for like a pure UGC, like these folks are helping like a robot block style. These folks are actually developing experiences, because I do think that UGC is like a massive area to tap into that Web3 enables, is this ownership of experiences, kind of like in combination with modding. But I'm looking for one of those. And I think that comes through like a MMORPG. But Yeah, I'm also on the hunt for a like RPG game built by a studio out of Asia, and it kind of we're strategic about the different types of games we have on. Again, we want to have experiences for everyone, but it comes down also to the founders, and if they understand like what our ethos is. And that's why we absolutely like fell in love with Glenn. You know, he's not a typical founder that has created, you know, all these games before, but what he has done in his past so much aligns with who Sky Mavis is and where we're going, and just generally how we believe Web3 will progress and what it takes to do that. And that's by bringing in the community. So yeah, if you're an amazing founder, I want to talk with you. We will most likely over the next, like, this is years and years, but probably open Ronin up for developers more and more. Not every game will be in the Mavis Hub or with a Sky Mavis partnership. Our partnerships, we offer equity investments, tokens, RON grants. We also have this thing called Own the App Store. So if Glenn brings in wallets and these people create a Ronin wallet, then he'll get a percentage, or Tribesters will get a percentage of all transactions in that wallet for X amount of years. So we really want to incentivize our developers to stay with us and bring wallets to our ecosystem. And if you believe in the vision of Sky Mavis and are slowly bringing on these game studios, deeply helping them grow, then you could be, you know, you can... that value is probably immense if you really buy into what that looks like, because these users will then have this player crossover between games and other interactions you can have within our ecosystem. So yeah, still looking to talk with everyone. That is my entire job. I just talk all day. So yeah, if you're a developer, please reach out to me at the partnerships@skymavis.com email, and we'll have a chat.
You described my job as well as a investor and podcaster. I talk all day. That's all I do.
Yes.
Good.
Talk all day and then I paint all night because I'm like low key an introvert. It's like, it's really, I'm either like an extreme extrovert and I'm talking to everybody at the party, or I'm like painting by myself for like 48 hours straight on a weekend.
Okay. So I'm the same, but you can replace painting with playing video games.
Gaming.
And I would say that I'm probably never going to be the most social person in the room. I have a small social battery. It's like I can do a bit of a like I can be social for a few hours, but then I need to like find some alone time and play some games.
Yeah, I'm becoming a pretty big gamer too. I have most of the consoles. I was a big Skyrim gal on my Xbox for quite some time, and then I recently rewarded myself with the PS5 because I've had the other PlayStations, but now I have PS5. Immediately got back from GDC, played God of War, and was like sobbing. The lore was just making me so sad, and I was so emotionally attached to it. So I understand video games as an escape as well. And what Web3 enables with them is, I like being really super productive. Like I make these paintings, I grow things, and I think Web3 is really cool when it comes to video games because you're productive with your time. You can end up monetizing your time. You're owning your assets. You're maybe leveling up your assets. You're building this community. I know some of that is standard in general gaming, but yeah, it's cool.
A fun hot take just to throw into the user-generated content challenge and conundrum. Whoever will win that will be the person who understands curation the most. Mm-hmm.
Whoever will win what? Sorry, I'm not fully following.
Yeah, so the user-generated content conundrum. So the conundrum is that today people can create all kinds of content. Roblox and Minecraft is a great example of user-generated content. In order for it to scale into Web3, it's not a quantity challenge, it's a quality challenge. Whoever can add a curation layer, a smart curation layer to the assets that community creates will be the thing that wins at scale.
Glenn, are you doing that? Like, do you envision enabling that for developers with the platform eventually? Because it seems like you're starting off with this set of like lore and character development and art, but do you eventually see like these UGC experiences being built from your platform?
Yeah, we kind of have three versions of it. The first version is residency, where we have a very specific design requirement that the users can build, and that will go into the game. The second version of it is something that we call demand side process, which is, let's say, as we're developing content for the game, we've got a new expansion pack for the game, for instance, and we need 42 village houses, 17 trees, 9 villagers. We think that there's an ecosystem that will be there by the time that we launch it, with guilds and DAOs that will have experience, and it's almost like a tender process where we'll like say, hey, this month we need 19 houses. Who wants to build 19 houses with this, and this is the price for building that. So we have a kind of an ecosystem play that we plan out for it. So demand side, where you are providing what is needed, and then that can be built by user generated content or guild generated content, is super important for us. But again, like we're curating that side. The ultimate win is that you allow that to bubble inside your community, but you add a really smart curation layer. Now that could be like, we could probably have a whole podcast on how to solve that particular challenge, but you could leverage off your community to vote for things. It's a little bit self-serving to ask the community to vote for things. You could get a lot of people that just vote based on popularity. So the curation of all the items that are created become a really interesting opportunity, because it's not hard to create user-generated content today. Again, it's not that we need quantity, it's that quality has to be able to filter through. And look, I'd say that that's certainly true for us. There are elements of our social MMO that has build elements in it, but it's not like Minecraft, for instance, that anybody can kind of build anything in. So the other thing I would say is that it depends on the game, it depends on the world, it depends on how much interoperability you want on that. So like interoperability and user-generated content could be a really interesting niche for a player. So that could be that, they're designing with certain things in mind, that it's a running asset that is built once that everybody gets to use. I think that's a super interesting thing, and some of those require, pretty like operating standards as to how it would go into each game. But user-generated content is going to be enormous. Curating and finding the quality inside it is going to be the biggest challenge, and then having it in a format that developers or studios can consume easily is also going to be a really interesting challenge. But it's a fascinating space. We're gonna solve it through demand side, where we dictate, we determine what it is the need is, and then people build it off quality and we put it in. And I think for what it's worth, there's just so many incredibly talented people out there that we think, the process allows us to put more content out faster than ever before. So, and the content's a real challenge in the industry. Creating great content that people can engage with as fast as possible, is a part of the fun in making always on live operated games. So it's a real component part.
Content for Web3 is like absolutely key, and that's why we're super interested in you as well, because you have all of these creators that now can have like ownership of the game through the assets or the open market, and like they need to be fed, right? And you do that through content. And some people will hold your Web3 assets and not even play your game every day, but they like being part of the community and seeing that content. It's almost like a meta MMO in itself, what is happening in with content spread across the internet, and then also being able to own these assets. So it's very exciting. Nico, as one of the biggest investors in the space, what are you looking at from a game's perspective that is interesting?
So you mean broadly, what am I looking for in games to invest in?
Yeah, like what genre are you most excited about for Web3?
So one of the difficulties about being both a gamer and a gaming investor is that you tend to lean towards games that you want to play yourself.
Yeah.
Which, and my problem is I like to play like the big games or like very strategic games. But the most profitable games, and very few people talk about this, are mobile games and like social casino games and these types of games. And I never play those. Like I paid a shit ton of money for a gaming PC. I'm not gonna sit and play on my phone, right?
Yeah.
Also, I'm at home all day, so like I have no reason to play on my phone. Anyway, what am I looking for? I think us at Bitcraft, we probably put the most amount of emphasis on team. Team is key. We look at founders that have a proven ability to successfully ship games at scale. That's in one sentence like what we would look for as a step, like a first step, and then we look for games that make sense within the Web3 space. What I like to look for is games that use Web3 in a foundational way, where it's more than just a monetization layer. It's more than, CSGO, but the skins are NFTs, right? I think that I would call that Web 2.5. And I don't mean that in a bad way. Mm-hmm. There's a really good chance where, at least in the short term, the most successful games in Web3 will be like that, where it's just really marginal. But I like to look at the weirder stuff. That's what gets me excited.
Yeah, I think it'll be, we are lucky at Sky Mavis because we get to take all these different bets, because our main goal is all these users into our ecosystem. So regardless of how it happens, like we're looking at like Web 2.1 games, Web 2.5, because I think the next onset of users from Web 2 to Web 3 is either, slowly through maybe a game that's already in existence, adding Web 3 elements into it and acquiring players that way. I've been really interested in Albion Online. I'm trying to get in touch with them and just see, because I think their economy would bode really well to adding Web3 assets. So I want to see what that would look like. Shout out Albion if you're listening, please.
They definitely are. 100% they are. No doubt.
Interest. Or it is a totally unique game that leverages Web3 in a unique way. I think that's what Glenn is really getting at doing in this decentralized voting manner. And I'm looking for the weird stuff as well. And so if you're developing something wacky and cool, this is a new tool that we're at the genesis of figuring out what it does and how to leverage it. And so I'm really interested in, the teams are really important, and specifically the game designers are really important as well. Do you have a game designer on your team that has done something unique in the past and leverages this new technology as this new tool that can create something different and unique? So I'd agree with you there.
Amazing. So if you do something weird, come talk to me and Kathleen. Maybe Glenn. Maybe Glenn too. No, he's a nice guy. So
all day long.
Glenn's great, because I also now, because we have such a tight knit group of studios that we work with, Glenn speaks with Alex and Jeff and the founders of Axie Infinity and Sky Mavis themselves. But now we can bring Glenn in to help evaluate a game because, we are aligned. We have aligned incentives to succeed as an ecosystem, this family holistically. So, maybe you'll end up talking with Glenn. So
amazing.
We have a pretty intense vetting process.
I'm sure.
It's super intense, but glad to bring partners in. Also, one thing I wanted to touch on, which Glenn, I don't know if you're allowed to speak of or not, but something we found really interesting about Glenn, and it kind of paints a picture of why he's capable of building this community engagement platform, not only because what he's done in building some of the biggest communities, which I kind of wish he talked about, all of the different things that he would do, psychologically to build these communities, because it's freaking cool. But at one of the companies, he built this customer service platform that scaled 400 million users, right? So he understands user journey and figuring out what their needs are and what their questions are and how to guide them to end up with a successful result and a happy customer. So he also has the chops to actually scale this technology that he is building.
No, nobody ever builds anything by themselves, by the way.
Build a team.
A great team built incredible products, but we built effectively a machine learning product that handled 400 million customers, and sometimes it responded in seconds. Ultimately, read your email, read a database, read a machine learning product, said, "Hey, I think your question is about this." Give a response to it. If the response was accurate, the person could say it was accurate. If it wasn't, then it went to an agent. But the response came from a community site. So we had 11,000 people answer questions on a community site that provided all the answers for all of the games. And we had kind of emotional loops with people to kind of get it right, and we had badges and gamification systems and all these kind of fun things to kind of incentivize people to be a part of a really great community, helping other gamers. So
cool.
these things are they're super awesome, and we get to kind of bring the next version of what that looks like at scale. So we're excited.
Amazing. I look forward to, like, in 6 months, getting the two of you back on, and then we can talk about the progress that has been made, the proof points that have been shown, the community that has been engaged and involved. Maybe even something playable. I don't know. Let's see. Good. All right. I think people know where to find you. Like half an hour ago, we discussed that, and then we dove into some other stuff. So that's really good. So Glenn and Kathleen, thank you so much for joining. This was
Thank you
fantastic.
for having us.
I've spent a lot of time with both of you on calls, and I knew this was going to be a very enjoyable one. And then, listener, I hope you enjoyed as well, as much as we did. I hope you learned something. I hope you're excited about this. And if you are, reach out to Glenn, and maybe you can learn from him, and at some point, perhaps use the tools as well. So, with that, we are out, and we look forward to speaking to you in the next episode.